Living Matters is a podcast that delves into the profound experiences of people living with incurable illnesses. Co-hosted by me, Sarah Harrison, founder of Sarah's Star.
And me, Nicky, founder of My Zen Days. The podcast talks about life, death, and everything in between. So if you're suffering with incurable illness or you know someone who is, then come and join us for our conversations. Welcome back to Living Matters podcast. We're joined today by a really special guest. So we have Brian with us. Now, Brian is Sarah's brother. Hello, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Nicky. Thank you both for having me.
Pleasure. So this is the Living Matters podcast hosted by myself, Nicky Thackeray, and Sarah Harrison, founder of Sarah's Star. And we're talking about all things life, death, and in between. Now, if you've been following the podcast, you will recently have met Joanne. So Joanne is the third of the three musketeers here between Sarah, Brian, and Joanne. So they're the siblings, and we listened to Joanne talking about her experience, the experience she's had of walking side by side with Sarah throughout all of this journey. And so Brian wanted to bring you on as well and hear your perspective and just have a conversation with you and see how it's been from your point of view. So shall we start there? What's it been like from your point of view, walking also side by side with Sarah?
It's hard to find words, I suppose, to explain. I guess there's been so many ups and downs and tough times, but also rewarding times. And I guess I've always wanted to try and pitch the right support that Sarah needed. And that's been an evolution as well. That's been a journey for me, because you're never going to get it right first time, or you're lucky if you do. And trying to find the right way to support Sarah has been something that I've had to invest a lot of thought and time in. Mm. I remember initially, I think Sarah and I are quite similar in that we want to turn a negative into a positive. We want to find the window that we can open once the door shuts. It's that reframing that we try and do that is, to be honest, a bit of a superpower, I suppose, and isn't something that I'm grateful for. But initially that meant that, I suppose, when Sarah and I were having conversations about the situation, and particularly when she had perhaps received bad news, I was always looking for the opportunity to reframe it, or I was looking for the right time to try and do that. And one of the ways I might approach that was, in those difficult conversations, was there space for laughter? Was there space for, a bit of lightness, really? And over time, I suppose, I've learned that that's not always necessary. Sometimes you need to just sit back and be that blank slate that maybe sometimes Sarah needs to allow her to be vulnerable and to be vulnerable with her.
I think it has been a real journey with that, because we use humour so much within our family, and that's how we've got through loads of the things that have happened in our lives, really. And I do think because of the progression and the different things that have happened, I've really recognised you doing that. The moments where you're like, actually, I'm just going to be quiet now. Mm. And then other times as well, because Brian does go to the positive. And then I think at times there was moments where things were quite bad. And I could really feel you clutching at straws of, but I want to take this real positive side of it, because they've said this. And I think it is really good that you can do that, because out of all of us, I know I'm really quite positive, but I think sometimes within the moment, you're really good at doing that. Whereas I think with Joanne, sometimes she's like, shit, it's happening again. We're all, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, she's amazing and she's always there, and she's there day in, day out. I think that's the thing as well. She's like consistently, whereas me and Brian will talk on the phone and we don't get to see each other as much as we would like to. But yeah, I think it's such a lovely balance between the three of us, to be honest, and my mum as well, and how we manage and navigate through it.
Yeah, and initially, there wasn't any right way to react. There was the different diagnosis that you've had, and the first one, I felt quite positive. It was coming out of what had happened with Dad and Dad passing away, and I thought, there's no way that, what this is going to happen again. There's going to be a positive outcome. And then Sarah got re-diagnosed, and that was I remember that vividly, being at work, you phoning me, telling me to, go somewhere private and sit down, and and I guess a message to convey to anyone else that might be in that situation where they need to support a loved one who's going through something similar is there isn't any right way.
Yeah.
The key thing is to be supportive and to be there, and to offer support in the best way that you can, but make space for yourself as well, because it's a difficult thing to have to process, and maybe, yeah, there isn't a perfect way to do it, and it's all going to be based on the individual and how you react, and time as well. It takes time to process these things.
And everybody processes it differently. It's that. But I suppose when you're in the moment, it's really hard. We've got this experience now where we've learned so much from it. So it's actually quite nice that you've got that sound advice as well, to be able to say, like, try and take time, because you kind of feel like there's no time.
How did you process it? When Sarah's had big news, difficult news to share, and especially with you not living around the corner, so it's not like you're sort of 5 minutes away. What does that process of processing look like for you?
So a really important thing is the support network that you've got around you. I think Sarah called it our own army, her army's army. That my wife, thank God, is a really understanding and caring and supportive person, and she's sort of my rock, where I really lean on her at times like that. Sometimes when it's been almost like the worst possible news, that my instinct is I want to hug one of my kids, like, and I think it's the people that you're closest to who you instinctively want in that immediate period when you've had something that can be quite crushing in terms of news that really disappoints you, really feels like, close to rock bottom. And then after that, it's sometimes having a word with yourself and analysing what's going on, thinking about your thought processes, and are they helpful for you? Are they going to be helpful for the person that needs your support? And as Sarah said, as we sort of agreed, that sometimes that needs time, and giving yourself that space. But there's the obvious things as well that will help fortify you, like, exercise and stuff like that. There's things that you need to do to put you in the right frame of mind to be able to be supportive and process difficult information, difficult times. So yeah.
So it sounds as though, sorry.
I was just going to say, Brian's quite good with meditation, and, me and him got into that after my dad died. Brian first, really. And I think that was a real new process for you as well, like a new route.
There's certain times in your life that are almost like watershed, that are the before and after moments. And when Dad died, that was really, if not the time, then certainly one of the times, probably the most significant of those, where, there's you before that event and there's you after that event. And first of all, again, I went to the positives. Oh, it's going to be okay. This is manageable. How many more years is he going to get? And then again, there was a second diagnosis when they actually tried to operate on him, and that was much more devastating, because it became apparent that it wasn't going to be a very long time and it wasn't going to have any kind of positive outcome. So I was, again, naively in Leeds at the time, because they were around his bedside and, it'll be okay, and everything's going to be fine. And
No, you're being well dramatic.
Again, there's been an evolution there where I've maybe grown up a bit and become more of a realist, like, and less of a fantasist with stuff like this. But one of the things that helped me was the point I wanted to make, where I was in Leeds Bradford Airport. I guess I wouldn't have put it in those words at the time, but instinctively I knew I didn't have the tools for what was coming. My dad was approaching his end of life care. It was almost time where he ended up in a hospice, and I remember just stepping back and W.H. Smith's and looking at a bookshelf, like almost grabbing for whatever inspiration, whatever help I could find. And there was a book there, and it was about mindfulness. It was actually one of those 8-week course books. It was by a guy called Michael Chaz-Calsam, I think he's called. And I bought it at the time, but we then went into this unbelievably, almost indescribable time of Dad's end of life and the funeral and the aftermath of that. And that was like,
intense.
Being on roller skates, if that's not too ridiculous you know, similarly to you, because it all happened. It all happened really fast, and I forgot about the meditation and the mindfulness, and then the quiet aftermath. Then, when you have to go back to normality, at least try to go back to normality. That's when I found I knew I was going to need it. I was going to need something different that I hadn't had before. And since then, it's been, I guess, a 10, 11-year journey of exploring mindfulness, exploring that quietude that, you know, can be so enriching, you know, especially in difficult times, and prepare you for those difficult times, prepare you for life in general. And what I found is that you do need the people that you love, you do need the people that you're closest to in times like that, and just in general. And those relationships are really important. And the best way I could invest in them was by having a look at what was going on in my own head and my mind, and analysing it and saying, is that narrative helpful?
No doubt there'll be a lot of people watching this thinking, mindfulness or meditation, like how could that help in a situation where you feel, you know, helpless in the sense of you can't necessarily change things for Sarah. So I think it'd be really interesting if you could bring that to life in terms of what's the value that you've had out of whether it's meditation or it's more mindful living. What's it done for you? What's it changed for you?
So the first thing I'd say is it's almost been immeasurable, because it does feel like a before and after scenario, where before that I just think I was well-meaning, but I was selfish, you know, and a lot of my behaviours were unconscious, and they were grounded in, you know, where I'd grown up, the environment I'd grown up in, the sort of negative self-talk, the low self-confidence that I had, that maybe wasn't something I recognised at a surface level, but that kept me unhappy as well. And one example would be my wife. I'm fortunate that she's someone she wants to make things work, and she wants to offer solutions, and she's brilliant at that. But I was almost like a drag, because I was coming up with reasons why stuff wouldn't work, and that was my natural, you know, my natural reaction to stuff. That'll never work, you know. And I was almost like ER, you know, that dark cloud, you know.
Is that true, Sarah? Is that how you remember Brian pre?
I don't think so. Not for me, but it's different in your relationship.
And in your mind.
And
yeah.
I think that's a protection thing, though, isn't it? But what if that happened?
But it's also very limiting, and it's also it's the fact that it's unconscious as well. And to answer your question, Nicky, analysing and being aware of those unconscious behaviours, and being on a track sometimes, and not being master of your own destiny, because there's life before you sort of wake up. But that sounds a bit grandiose, but if a lot of your behaviour, a lot of your life is unconscious, and you're just like going around doing things, and probably well intentioned, but you're not actually realizing, well, why am I doing it? Is it really what I want to be doing? Is it serving me? Is it serving the people around me? Then, you know, that flipping that switch is really powerful, and being able to lead a more intentional, more directed life where you're not on autopilot is quite powerful. And then there's just the quiet of it all, and the ability to appreciate the moment, and that leads into all sorts of other wonderful areas, like, you know, appreciating nature, being more in tune with your body, maybe moving into yoga and those types of practices as well. And the key thing is that it is a practice and an evolution, and sometimes it feels the great writer and Alan Watts, he said that the spiritual journey is sometimes like going through a, you know, multi-story building where you're chasing burglars, and they keep moving the floor up, and they keep moving the floor up, because there is that whole ego thing that you have to be aware of as well. It can, you know, if you're not careful, become another treadmill that you're on. So but as you get more into it, you realize those sorts of things, and it's just something else that you can be aware of. But yeah, just even starting that and being more aware was a really powerful thing.
Just to kind of recap what you're saying, it sounds as though what it's done for you is to help you become much more aware of the way that you think about stuff. and willing to challenge yourself if the way that you're thinking about stuff is a bit negative or it's a bit sort of, unhelpful.
Yeah.
For you, because I guess, being in this situation with Sarah, but also being an adult in the real world and living your life is very stressful, and so you can actually very easily, and a lot of people do, compound their own stress that they're experiencing as a result of just their life and the busyness and the expectations that people have of us or that we have of ourselves. So it sounds as though it's given you that's the part of the shift, at least, is to be able to become aware about, is the way that I'm thinking about stuff helping me, or is it making it worse? And reminding yourself that you've got a choice there, because you can start to practice saying different things to yourself. You can start to practice giving yourself a bit more of the quiet.
Yeah.
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 And sorry, go ahead.
No, and that leads into being aware of your parasympathetic nervous system and, being in fight or flight mode and, almost like your red or green modes and red or blue modes and that awareness. I guess, again, I've used the phrase superpower, but it can be a bit of a superpower because the most effective person in the room is often going to be the calmest person in the room, not the person that gives in to their anger or, whatever emotions might drive them. And obviously emotions can be powerful drivers, but if you can harness that and actually remain calm, then there's a lot to be said for, what you can achieve then by, being more in control of all of this.
For people who are thinking, I'm interested, I like the sound of Brian's experience that he's getting, the benefits that he's getting from it. What does your mindfulness practice look like in reality for you?
Okay, so I guess it started with, that 8-week course. There is an exercise, and that's more about, being aware of something that you're touching and the textures of things and the presence, and then it leads into guided meditations where someone will almost talk you through what you should be doing, and a lot of it means, sitting in an upright position, becoming aware of your breath. There's often an anchor that's involved, and a lot of the time that can be your breath. And if you follow the breath, then you can almost train your mind, if you like, to be more intentional and to focus where you want it to focus. And then going from there, I guess I found that what's called choiceless meditation, where you're not being guided by a voice. You're just being guided by what's going on inside you, following your breath, to be something that helped me a lot. And yeah, trying to do that for 10, 20, that minutes a day, that gives you a grounding, really. And it is a practice. It is something you have to keep going back to. It's like exercising a muscle by being intentional and saying, I'm going to focus on whatever it is that you want to focus on. And also just allowing yourself to be quiet, because sometimes all the debris of the day, everyone's busy, and be it work or family or, getting cut off in the car park or whatever it might be, allowing all that stuff to, some people say it's like emptying a bath sometimes, because I think one of the things that Joanne said, and a lot of people say, is, but I can't get my mind to be quiet. And I think she's realised, hopefully through our conversations and through her journey, that that's not what it's about. No one's saying that you need to have a quiet mind. It's a nice thing to have if you can get it every once in a while. But like I say, sometimes it's more like emptying a bath, like pulling the plug out and letting everything go out. And sometimes that's processing all of that noise and allowing it to be, and then getting to a place hopefully that's a little bit quieter.
We talked about as well, having them moments where you have to sit really uncomfortably with something. Like, instead of running away from the cringe that's been living in your head for 20 years, something ridiculous that you've decided that everybody remembers, and really just sitting within that. And we end up having some amount of laughing at, going back and reminiscing and bringing these things up again. But I think once we started talking about actually trying to sit with it and be like, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to let myself get to a point where I'm like, do you know what? It happened.
It is what it is. Yes. My sister, actually, she's got this big, massive sign on the fridge, like a big magnet that says, "It is what it is." And I always think of that when just sometimes something was not perfect.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but it's fine. You just let it go. So, you know, when you, because I think Brian was one of the first people to sort of introduce you to mindfulness and meditation, like what sort of resonates with you in terms of it's been a similar experience for you to what Brian's talking about?
I think in general, me and Brian are very similar natured. We're both quite laid back, and I don't know, we've always just kind of got on really well and just been dead similar. So and after my dad died, there is a real what do I do now type of thing. And I'd noticed you changing actually quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You were very calm and at peace. And I think I thought I could probably do a little bit of this in my life. And I think you might have given me a book. I can't quite remember, but yeah, you gave me a mindfulness book. And so I started reading that, and it kind of just came from there. And I think because, I don't know, I quite like things like that where it's about, about yourself and maybe looking a bit inwards. And I also think it's that thing that you touched on where you're kind of looking for something because you've just been through something huge. And I had started going to see a counsellor as well. So I always remember because he said to me, nothing's really happened to you in your life. Like, you've got to 33 and all of a sudden your dad's died and it's the biggest thing. And of course you're going to feel like a completely different person. Of course, nothing's going to be the same. And I remember going home and telling Joanne, she was furious. It's like, how dare he speak to you like that? But I was taking it as, I could see where he was coming from. But again, I suppose it's that thing where Joanne was still so angry. She was just grieving in that way. And so he also talked about mindfulness and meditation and just kind of sitting with yourself and going through the process. And I remember as well, I like stopped drinking. I really didn't want to end up in a place where my head felt like I couldn't cope. And I kind of just went into a bit of taking a step back. I think I withdrew a bit, really. Mm-hmm. While maybe at the same time just kind of looking in, like what Brian said, and looking for something that was going to help me get through, really.
And it worked?
I mean, not every day. Mm-hmm. But it set me up then. I think it was then when I got cancer myself, I really started doing it a lot more. Because when you're lying by yourself for such long periods of time, you have to really protect your mind. Mm-hmm. And I was always very aware of that if I let my head go, where it could actually go to. And that's something I still work really hard on today. And I see that within you as well, the real strive to put the hard work in, to do. And I'm so glad that Joanne's there now as well. And I think, it's lovely because it's just enhanced our bond, I think, as siblings. Mm-hmm. And even my mum, like we've had my mum now at retreats and all sorts, and she'll give anything a go, and it's really lovely. So I think as a whole, we've all kind of just immersed ourselves in some kind of mindful living. Mm-hmm. But the big thing within it is, I think what's lovely is finding them moments of joy. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really nice about the little positive bits that you're always really good at pulling out. But when Brian was little, like Joanne will say, he used to tell her stories about being on the magic bus and just keep her going and keep her mind occupied and be really creative, and she'd be fascinated in that. So I think it's always been in you, really, to have this ability to let your mind be able to go to somewhere more magical, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Watching and loving Sarah from afar and being a brother and everything, it's got to feel really hard. And then meanwhile, you've got your life, your family, your wife, and your own life that you're living. So What's it like for you in terms of allowing yourself to feel the moments of joy whilst at the same time you've got this concern and the worry that's constantly ongoing?
And yeah, that's difficult because I think Joanne articulated as, the door that you daren't open. It's how much you allow yourself to think about the reality of the situation and whether that's helpful. And obviously, as Sarah said, sometimes you have to sit with those difficult emotions and they have to be acknowledged, they have to be released, because there's a school of thought that says if you allow them to stay in your body, then that can lead to illness and disease and people not being well. So it's important to acknowledge those and to be with them. But as you say, when you have a family and jobs and a life to think about, you often have to find a way to prioritize everything while also recognizing what's really important. I guess again, one of the things that helps more than anything else is having understanding people around you, and all of those people love Sarah as well, which is a massive help, and they're impacted by it too, so they understand. We all understand differently, we all have a different connection, but they're all really strongly bonded to Sarah, so there's an understanding there, I guess, and some sort of appreciation of what I'm going through when I'm trying to support Sarah and trying to get my head around where she's at and what she's going through.
I think as a family too, we've really tried to just live lives as normally as we can and just keep going, put one foot in front of the other, and then deal with the big stuff when we really need to. And what's quite nice is even within the really horrendous news, more times than enough we end up laughing. Like one of the last times on the way back from the apartment, me and Joanne rang Brian. We were on the phone and it very quickly shifted to, what was it, your headache?
I had fallen while running and I had cracked my rib, and somehow Sarah had this what was really positive news, thank God, but obviously she had just been in, and really what we should have been talking about was Sarah's experience, and we did, but it soon seemed to move on to, I've just had a holiday in France, and I fell over and I think I've broken my rib, and I've had a headache today and work's tough or whatever. And at some point I realised, hang on a second, Sarah, we shouldn't.
But then we couldn't stop laughing because me and Joanne had so many questions about your rib. Yeah. But what if it's sticking under your lung? But what if that's like, you need to go to the doctor.
But I remember you said it a few times in various conversations about like living, I'm living with cancer. I'm not. And so there's life is happening all around you and all of the time. Even though.
Yeah. And I've started thinking and talking about this more recently, that I'm not given cancer power over me. Like, I just think it's trying to take enough. And I think that's why I'm so precious about the things I do, the people I spend time with, because I'm like, and that's why I say I'm living with cancer, I'm not dying from it. Should probably say yet.
But you're really generous as well in terms of how well you handle your situation, and you're so empathetic and thoughtful, and often to a fault, because your first instinct will be, can I tell that person this thing at that time and all, but what if they've got this going on, and so that you've made it as easy as possible for all of us by being, like I say, really generous and really it sounds crazy but considerate, and then we get baffled by that, but because it's like, but Sarah, you've got cancer, you're going through all this stuff.
But you broke your rib.
Just don't be told.
Joanne had a headache. But it's that's what gets us through, all the laughs, and like, even when my dad was dying, they used to come into the room and say, like, the laughter that was coming out of my dad's room, and the stupid things that we were doing and saying, and you don't know, well, you can't function, but you're in a room full of people who all can't function because everyone's so like, I don't know what to do, And then I think with us in particular, we use humour a lot, and our aunties and uncles are the same, and so it became, and my father's sense of humour was that, so it was quite nice. I think that even if when he was unconscious, if he could kind of still hear, there was a lot of banter and carry on and laughter in the room, and I think for me, I think I'd quite like that, because the nurse had come in and said, we don't know what he's waiting for. We don't know why he's still here. And then she came on another day and she said, there's only one thing. He just doesn't want to leave yous. And it was like, them little moments I think are quite precious as well for someone to, I mean, they're trained in it, aren't they? But I used to go around and make the beds with one of the nurses in the hospice just to keep busy. But we became a proper little unit on there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like, they had like apartments, so we just stayed on and off for the last 2 weeks. And it gave us opportunity to just be there with them as much as we could, sit in the room, have conversations. And even he sent us out to buy presents for the kids. So he died on the 25th of November, so just before he died, he gave all the kids a last Christmas present. And they were
memories you're never gonna forget.
It's nice to imagine that he could hear, the conversations and was just probably being entertained while you were all, just chatting.
Yeah.
Conversations.
I put some music on that I thought he'd like, and he went from being completely still to his hands really going, and that meant a lot. Like thinking, oh, he can hear this, and it was songs that we used to know from being really young, and that probably would have meant something to him. And just knowing that, as you're saying, he's still in the room and still aware of what's going on.
Yeah, 100%. What about, I'm dying to ask you this, how did you feel when Sarah announced she was going to be starting a charity?
So typical Sarah again, and how do you keep a good person down sort of thing, and she's always had boundless energy and positive energy, and if anything, before it was almost like, why is your star being hidden?
It's lovely.
Like, what, she's got so much to offer and so much to give that it almost seemed like the natural thing. So I think I didn't even think anything other than go, and can we help you, and what small way can you help you, because I'm a bit further away in that, but I definitely wanted to be involved. And the thing that really got me is having been through what we went through with my dad, and having seen how powerful that experience is in terms of how it shapes you, like I say, before and after for me. And it radically changed just the way I looked at life and what I wanted to do. So for Sarah to take on this mission, to understand, having been through her experience, that palliative care means something different, and to want to change attitudes. And when Sarah talks about her army, when I've been to quite a few of these events, like Sarah Stars had a Day of the Dead festival, and obviously you guys have talked quite a bit about the death cafes. When you see how impactful they are, it's almost like she's creating an army that are going to go and influence another army, and I think that's so powerful. When there was a death cafe last night, and you come away from those experiences so enriched and so bursting with new ideas, and wanting to share that positivity that you glean from speaking to people that you may never have otherwise spoken to, and getting their different perspectives on what death means, and just that mission of knowing that Sarah has been able to speak to nurses in a lecture situation, who are then going to go out and administer palliative care to hundreds, maybe thousands of patients. That's so powerful, that you're making that difference, and you're influencing things in a way that you probably can't even anticipate or understand. There's a multiplying factor there that is really, really powerful. So once I understood the mission as well, I was all in, because having gone through that bit of a journey of mindfulness, it led me into the more spiritual side of things, because obviously the next question then is, what's next, why are we here, and those type of big questions. And my mum always jokes from a very early age. I used to ask, well, where did I come from? And she'll say Strabane, which is where we grew up. And I'll say, no, before that, where did I come from? And there was always this curiosity, I suppose, in me, and that's still there. There's
So I'm really curious, actually, on that. And I don't think we've gone here yet. But what is your belief about where we come from and where we're going?
So last night at the Death Cafe, Joanne, one of Sarah's clients, and another of Sarah's clients, we were at the table, and the cards, they were interesting, but it was like, what do you think of sort of memoriam on the internet and stuff like that? Interesting, very topical, current thing to talk about. But then the last card that turned up was, what does life after death mean for you? And I was like, whoa, that's the
now you're talking.
and with someone wanted to share, and the great thing about the death cafes, especially when you've been to a few, you become a bit more selfless and you want to create space for other people to talk, especially when you know they've got something they want to get out of them. So I didn't really get to say much, but then in the death cafes there's typically two halves where Sarah switches things up and you get to talk to other people as well, and that's good because it refreshes everything. And we kept that card, and for the second half we were like, no, we're not done with this. We and two people remained on that table, and one other person joined us, and that was the only card that was left for the rest of the and there's so much to talk about, I guess, is the point that I wanted to make when you want to ask a question like that. But to try and condense it into something that, might make us sound bites really difficult. And I think what I said was, sometimes I think of like someone's life as like a wave. If you think of the ocean and the beach, like the wave, if you're lucky, will crest, and then the wave will eventually crash onto the beach, and then the wave will dissipate and get brought back into the ocean again. And it's very difficult to think of an afterlife in a way that doesn't translate to a story that's grounded in the experience of living. And that doesn't always make sense to me personally, in terms of, something happening in the clouds, and, the very idea of God as a man, with a big beard. I thought, why would he be a man? Why wouldn't he be a lady? Why does he even have to be human? Think of all the life that could exist throughout the universe. So I feel it more helpful for me to think of life and, what happens inside us when you get down to what you are in essence, as being like consciousness, energy, and that energy may be going on to be something else, hence being brought back into the ocean again. And then could that become another wave? What would that other wave be? Who knows? But maybe that's another life. So that's the way.
That's a really interesting analogy. Yeah. What about you? What do you believe?
I quite like that he brought it into nature as well, where it's like the wave, and I love that. I still am quite religious. Like, I still have my Catholic beliefs to an extent, and since we've started going to some of these retreats and that, I like adopting little bits of different things. Like, I quite liked when, I think it was Hindu, was it? When we went to the retreat in Enniskillen.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think the part I love about it the most is the real sense of community and the real sense of love, and that where you go is a good place of love, really. That's what I like to believe. And when I'm like doing it in my mind's eye, and I used to, after Daddy died, do a meditation where it was I would meet him on a bench. I would go down in a lift, and then the lift would open and it would be this gorgeous garden, and he'd be sitting on a bench. And I think I just like the ideas of what a potential heaven can be whatever you want it to be. Like, that's yours. And I think as well, why I like that is because it's not forceful, and it's not trying to put on to other people your beliefs. I believe that heaven's whatever you want it to be. And I'm really against any kind of fear mongering and this weird hell. And I just, because I think people can go through hell on earth, and sometimes that's enough. So why not have something to look forward to? I think that's what it is. That's what I'm working towards. I just want to find peace so that I can die in peace and be hopeful that if there is a new life, it's a good new life. If there's not, But I like to think there's a source, and we go there and we'll see our people that we've lost before. And yeah, just nice, comforting things.
And since it's a big question, Nicky, would you mind
Yeah.
offering us your perspective?
My opinion. So I think I'm probably like similar. So I love the wave analogy, and I can really kind of resonate with that in terms of like energy renewing, time and time again. So I really like that. And I think, I was raised a Catholic, so it was very much, you were instructed that there is heaven, the good people go to heaven, and then there's hell, and the bad people go to hell. And I don't really believe that, but I've always had a sense, like a really deep felt sense, that we all come from the same sort of place or source, whatever that might be. And that we'll eventually all return to the same. And so whether you recycle, if you like, sort of the sort of death and rebirth type of thing, then maybe yes, and I can see how that might work. But I think what I love most about the question, about the topic, is that no one actually knows.
Yeah.
No one actually knows. And so I have a problem sometimes when people will say, either they know that there is life after death, or that they know that there is no such thing as life after death. And it's like, yeah, but nobody actually knows. And it's whatever you feel, whatever your inner knowing is, and that's what I love. But I think it's strange because, like, I don't know whether you've ever had this experience, probably you have, where you're walking down a street or you visit a town and you think, I'm pretty sure I must have had a life here at some point. Like, I must have a past life. And there's a couple of different streets near-ish to where I live and down the beach where I have that experience. And I'm like, yes, I'm pretty sure that in the past I will have had that. And interestingly and weirdly, I had this, I don't know whether you've ever had sort of an experience with Akashic records. That was quite interesting. And so they get a pendulum out, and she's sort of swinging the pendulum around, and what she said to me was 276 lives ago I was a man.
Wow.
And she was giving me all this detail and everything, and I thought, yeah, there's certain parts of it where it feels like, yeah, that probably could have happened. So I feel really open to it, and I feel really against whenever people say, no, you're born, you live your life, and you die, and when you're dead, that's it. But also I've got my own motivations as well for genuinely wanting to not believe that. Like, I want to believe, like you say, that the people that you love and that the people that you've lost, they're going to be there and you're going to see them again, and they're not necessarily going to look exactly the same, and you're not going to look exactly the same. But that you'll kind of, your lives will be intertwined in some sort of way. I love that, and I feel it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm right or not. It doesn't matter if I am right or not,
Because it's the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was interesting because we ended up talking about this. I suppose being at the Death Cafe, you end up then that you're a bit wired, and you've got like loads
open, your antennas up, and
yeah. And it was nice because I'd said to Brian, and what fascinates me is that it's a choice to believe nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because I've been brought up to believe that something happens afterwards, and then I've developed, my own things. But I think it's quite scary to me to just think of nothingness, black.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm also about like, but that's a choice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Choose to believe nothing. It just interests me. I think, and if people are listening to this, it would be good to have a take on someone if they want to message in on their opinion on, why they think there's nothing. Or
well, we should invite my husband on, because
is he a nothing?
He's very much a sort of no, this is it. You've got to make the most of your life while it's it, because you come in and then you die, and then that's the end of it. And I'm like, I don't find that inspiring at all. I don't know, and I'm not going to enjoy believing that, so I'm going to choose to believe something different.
Yeah.
I love your point on the mystery as well, like, because if there wasn't that element of mystery, that you don't know how it's all going to end, or you don't know what's going to happen after it necessarily, certainly that's part of what makes life so exciting.
Yeah, it does. But I get really fascinated about when people will recount past lives, or they kind of do some regression therapy, and they can recount with such great detail previous lives that they had. Well, there's got to be something in that. There's no smoke without fire, and or you look into, and I remember not long after my brother died, sitting in the bath. Get this, I was sitting in the bath, and I was in the bath for 4 hours. I kept having. This was the longest, but it was about 4 hours, 10 minutes, right?
Prune.
The longest one in my history. I kept having to like let the water go and refill it because it was getting cold. But I was sitting like this with this book, reading about near-death experiences because I was desperate at this point to know, where has he gone?
Yeah.
I can't see him and he's not here. Where has he gone? And I just wanted to learn and have so many ideas that would try to help to explain it so that in my head I could start to process it. But it was really fascinating because there's that many people who have had near-death experiences where they were complete skeptics. They were the ones, before it happened to them, where they're saying, no, this is all there is.
Yeah.
And once you're gone, that's the end of it. You can't prove anything else. And so they've had this experience and they come back and they have a completely different perspective. And there's just such value and richness in that.
Yeah. And I read a book about John Edwards. He's like a medium, a psychic medium. And I wouldn't usually even go there. But I was quite intrigued. And what I loved was he was a complete skeptic. And his mum used to go to psychics and he'd just wind her up. We're like, oh, you going to one of your psychics again? And it turned out he had this gift. But some of his stories are like, he was on his honeymoon. And basically the spirit just tortured him the whole time.
Oh, no.
It was like, contact this person. And he was just like, oh my, you can't actually switch it off.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the stories that he told had so much evidence behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you can't make them things up. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't know, I think if anything throughout all of this, we've opened our minds to so much more. Mm. I think maybe I wouldn't even have gone there, and I'm really appreciative of that because why not ask all the questions and try and find out all the things, and it's just fascinating really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like you have to cultivate hope.
Yeah.
You've got to cultivate hope. And whether you're the person who's dealing with the really difficult situation or you're sort of on the outskirts, loving and supporting someone who's dealing with it, for whatever reason, like cultivating hope, there's nothing bad going to come from that.
Mm.
So it's what kind of inspiration, what kind of messages do you want to hear? What can you listen to? What can you focus on that's going to give you a little bit extra energy, a little bit extra sense of optimism, and I can deal with this? It's got to be a good thing.
Mm. Yeah, and it's about like what we're talking about, meditation, the mindfulness, about what you're taking in.
Yeah.
And then what you're giving back out. And that energy source really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's wanting to be in that positive place where it's actually quite nice. And I think that's why, we touched on this in other episodes. It's why I always say it's easier for me if I'm in a good place, because it's a much nicer place to be positive. And, it's really hard on them negative hard days. And I'm sure that's the same for you as well. It's because it's not always a bundle of joy and roses, and that's okay as well.
So what else, Brian? Because I love the word you said right at the beginning where you were talking about you have to fortify yourself, right? So obviously mindfulness, obviously meditation. You mentioned about the normal things like exercise and stuff like that. So, and knowing who your rock is, having that time to sort of, give hugs to your children and just try and cultivate a bit of joy in the moment, stuff like that. Is there anything else that's really worked for you?
Cold showers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, well, once you become that, I don't know, it sounds a bit corny, but spiritual seeker, it just sort of opens doors to different areas that you want to explore. And, I've looked into all sorts of stuff, like, read books on shamanism. But one of the things that is a daily thing for me is, Sarah said, cold showers, where I heard about this guy called Wim Hof. He's quite popular now. He's done a BBC primetime series, so a lot of people will have heard of him. But it's not just about the cold exposure, it's about the breathing techniques as well. And I found they really helped me. They really helped me focus. I even felt like, my eyesight was sharper when I started doing the breathing exercises, and something that I've carried forward with that and that I'm quite, rigid about now is the cold showers. And by that I mean, I've barely had a hot shower for the past, 6 or 7 years, so it's all cold showers. And the great thing about the cold exposure, and there's obviously different ways that you can do it, but an easy way is a cold shower in the morning where you can get up, you can almost feel quite, zombified, and then it's a radical shift where you jump in a cold shower psychologically first, the act of doing that and facing that challenge, climbing that little mountain at the start of the day, it sort of sets you up for, all right, I've conquered that little hill, so can I conquer the next bunch of hills that I need to conquer, whatever they may be. So that's that psychological shift that helps. And then there's the actual, in the depths of winter, it's a very powerful thing. Like, there's rarely times I've felt more alive than stepping out from a proper ice cold shower. And then there are other ways you can do it as well. Like, I know you guys went to CM Hall recently, and hopefully they'll thank us for the plug, but they've got a cold...
Would love another spa day, just saying. Yeah.
just putting it out there. There's a wonderful cold plunge pool there. And I remember Joanne saying to me that she had found, real peace in swimming underwater, doing an entire length underwater. So I started doing that. But then when I went to CM Hall, being able to literally immerse myself in the cold and stay there for like 2 minutes, because the Wim Hof breathing, it trains you to be able to, retain breath for quite a long period of time without needing to breathe. And everything was just gone. It was like I was just, floating out in the universe somewhere, like being in the cold. So that's I can't speak highly enough about what that's done for me. And I think, doesn't your husband
husband and son, yeah, they both do it. So we have like an ice bath outside, it's a Lumitherapy one, and so that's always full of water. So Adam, my husband, and Josh, who's 9, they do that. He's 9, and so Josh wants to be a world champion at jiu-jitsu, and he's kind of on that track. He's very, very focused. He's been doing it since he was 4. He absolutely loves it. And a lot of that is kind of discipline and mindset work. But he just said, I want to get in here. And it's not ice cold, so we don't need anybody getting concerned that he's getting in ice cold water. But he, at the beginning, because it's uncomfortable, because it is cold, he would look like a spider, if you imagine, right? He would be on top of the faffing around for a start for like 10 minutes before he would go anywhere near it. But then he would perch with his hands here and his feet clinging on the top, arching his back, so he didn't want to go in. And he would be faffing on, and then eventually he would plunge and he would do his thing. And so it was always interesting kind of watching him build himself up mentally to do it. But fast forward now, and he's been doing it for around about 8 or 9 months. He walks in the door from jiu-jitsu practice, chucks all of his clothes off, just leaves them on the floor and just walks and gets straight in. And he just sits there and he's doing the breathing. He's watched the Wim Hof stuff as well. He just sits and does the breathing, and he'll normally do 2 or 3 minutes, and then he does a dunk, and then he's out and he's in the hot shower. And he loves it. And in terms, I think, and that's exactly why, it's the same benefit that him and Adam get as well, is that you prove to yourself that it's mind over matter. I can do hard things, I can repeatedly, and if I can just keep training myself to do it, then I can do it without the big fanfare sort of thing. So that's what it's like for him. And then for Adam, he does it. And it's strange. It's interesting because he gets this massive surge of energy when he gets out. So often I'll kind of look out the kitchen window and it's as if he's in Ibiza at a beach party and he's dancing and he's just in his box shorts. But he gets that surge.
Yeah.
And it makes him feel really good for all the kind of mental reasons of I've kind of conquered that resistance to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I think it just really gives them the sort of energy and the vitality.
Women don't need to be in as cold a temperatures than men. So I'm quite interested in looking into that a little bit more. Because that difference.
Yeah.
But then if you're going in the sea, you can't pick your temperature.
Well, no.
I'm a woman.
Yes.
Warm up.
Adjust thyself. Well, that's it. Yeah. I think if you find whatever it is that gives you a little boost, find whatever it is that makes you feel a bit better, a bit stronger, a bit more able to deal and cope with your life or the situation that you're in, then all for it. And I think it's a good thing to just try lots of different things. I know you're brilliant at this. Wow. Trying lots of different modalities to find the ones that really work for you. And then once you've got them, that's like your toolkit. It is. I was watching something I was watching a different podcast the other day, and it was talking specifically about that, like the toolkit. And it was saying you can have a spanner in your toolkit, but there's only certain jobs that that's good for.
Yes.
You can have a hammer in your toolkit, and there's different jobs that tool's good for. So it's not about just ever having one tool that you hope is going to fit all eventualities, but you build it up over time. So you've got all these different things that you can pick out depending on the situation, you know, and what you need.
I love that.
It's good, isn't
Really
it?
good, yeah.
And another key one, I think, is gratitude and trying to remember, which I don't always do. A great time to do it is in the morning, first thing in the morning, and sometimes it's easy. Like this morning, waking up, having been to a death cafe and thinking there's something ready-made that I can feel grateful for. Getting to see Sarah, getting to do this, like this is an experience that I wouldn't really have dreamed of being able to take part in, so it's great, and it's something I've really looked forward to and really been thinking about in a positive way. So having things like that you can wake up and find quickly, that you can be, you know, some people say find 5 things, and sometimes it's the big things. It's like, you know, being married and being happy, having kids who are healthy and stuff like that. But then sometimes you can just find the little things, like something nice that's happened in a day. A nice cake that you had or something like that.
I was hearing about the nice cake.
Sometimes it can be the simple things, but I guess you guys hopefully find that gratitude is one of, in terms of core ingredients or key ingredients, is that maybe one of the key ones for you guys as well?
Definitely.
Definitely. I know it's big for you, isn't it?
I think that's what, I don't know, I think it keeps me quite grounded as well, because it's always knowing there's something to be grateful for. And I think we had done this together where we'd done a month of gratitude and it was 3 things every night. And I quite like that, but it backfired a little bit because I decided my whole family should do it, and it ended up in tears with my children crying, saying, I don't want to be grateful for anything.
Sarah, this is not a great advert for what we did.
But if you're having to force gratitude on people, is it any wonder they're crying? Everybody being dragged into the living room.
Can I just
Get the
be
book out.
miserable, please, for a little while? Give me 10 minutes
I
of
was
misery.
playing my game. I'm not grateful for being here. That's what they were like.
That's exactly what my son Dylan did as well. I started introducing this before a meal. We're all going to say something that we're grateful for. And he inverted it and started saying, well, I'm not grateful for being bullied into have to be grateful all the time.
Bullied.
Well, we've
Grateful
got a theme.
bullying.
We've got a theme because I tried to encourage, and it didn't work either. So I think we need to just look after, do it for ourselves, don't we?
Amen.
And then hopefully people will look and think, what an amazing role model. Let me try that for myself.
We all,
Works for you, yeah.
all these miserable children behind us.
But you can't force it. That's the big takeaway from that.
Exactly.
So I have got a question before we wrap it up, and it's the same question that I asked Joanne, and this is, if there was one message that you would love for Sarah to know, what is it? So you've been watching her go through this whole journey. What would you love to say to her?
I suppose thank you is the
Oh,
simple thing.
it's really lovely.
Thanks for being you, and, you know, getting to share something that on the surface and looking from the outside, and that's not to minimise everything that you've been through and the hard times that you've had to experience and the hardship that's, you know, been inflicted on you, been inflicted on Chris and your kids, and, you know, there's no disputing that has been incredibly difficult, and it's something that you've had to live with. But out of that, you know, you mentioned joy. You've enabled us to find a lot of joy, and you've turned something that, again, might have flattened a lot of people. I don't know how I would have reacted, but I doubt I would have created my own charity and turned it into something so beautiful. So the fact that you've been able to do that it's inspiring, you know, and, you know, we're all really inspired by you, your army. We're behind you all the way and every step of the way as well. And yeah, I may not be Captain or Major Joanne, but hopefully I'm not too far behind, and I'm not going to try and usurp Joanne. We all know
Vice President.
she's a force of nature. but yeah, it's amazing that, you know, there's so many things that we wouldn't have experienced. There's probably now a quality of, we were always really, really, really tight, like, and, you know, we had a lot of good times, like going to festivals like Glastonbury together
Yeah.
and doing silly things like staying up later than we should have,
Asking people
drinking
loads of
and
questions
we
like, what's your flavour?
we polled people at Glastonbury and asked them what their flavour was. We got some really
Nicky, what's
unusual
your flavour?
I don't know what you're talking about, so I don't.
So, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'd try and sum it up using words from someone a lot cleverer than me. Leonard Cohen said something like, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything, and that's where the light gets in." And that was in a little booklet you gave me. It was like a daily meditation,
yeah.
like daily meditation thoughts. And I came across it and I was like, wow, that explains something so well that's not easy to articulate. But sometimes the thing that might break us can also be the thing that maybe makes us, or certainly makes us into something different, and maybe even something better. So yeah, thank you.
That was beautiful.
That really
Thank
was.
you so much. Really beautiful.
Amazing, thank you. And Sarah, what would you love to say to Brian?
Oh, I think you keep me grounded, keep me nice and calm, and I know that you're always there. Like, I just love you, and I love that. I love how you've explained all this. I love that you've come on. I think your take on all the things that we've been talking about has been invaluable. And I think for people who are listening that are maybe a little bit lost and don't know what to do maybe in an uncertain time, might pick up a book or do some mindfulness or meditation. So I really appreciate you being here. And I've had a lush couple of days with you. It's been lovely.
It's always a pleasure. Any time spent with you has always been good time, Sarah. Thank you. And thanks, Nicky, for...
Thanks, Nicky.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, and tune in next time where we'll have more interesting conversations on life and death and everything in between. Thank you.